Hello people, welcome to episode 11 of the Irrelevant Rockcast with me, Matanza Mafia-Fedora.
And Mr. DuPont. And today we are without Matt Mills because he has a very busy weekend. And so today it will just be me and Matanza Mafia-Fedora here. And just like old times yet again. And today we're going to be talking about your trip to Cardiff.
Yeah.
And the rock culture within the city.
Yeah, indeed.
We will also be talking about AC/DC and how Brian Johnson has to retire from touring because he may go deaf otherwise, which is sad news, especially for me having a ticket. We'll talk about that shortly. Down parting ways with European festivals this summer due to the actions of Phil Anselmo in January at the Dime Bash. And Matanza here will be talking about Sabaton and Alestorm because he didn't get a chance to talk about them last week. And
I was in Wales.
You were, and he will also be doing his top 5 guitar solos because we were without him last week when me and Mills did it.
Yeah.
And I will be doing my top 5 album openers. So that's the episode. And I'll tell you what, I didn't end up going to Exodus this week. I'm currently in free place for the Let's Act showcase, and on Tuesday afternoon I did 3 different run-throughs and I was just exhausted. I was way too exhausted. I just wanted to chill out in my room, and it's unlike me to say this, people, but I actually didn't have the energy to go to a gig. I hadn't booked it. I was planning on paying on the door, but after those 3 run-throughs, I was just gone, exhausted.
And if you're ever that fortunate as to turn up in his flat to watch him perform, this guy has got a lot of frigging energy.
Yeah, thank you for saying so.
No worries.
So yes, but Matt Mills, though, did go to the Exodus gig with Lost Society and Dendera, and we will be reviewing that gig next week. Unfortunately, myself and Matt here can't because we weren't there, but next week you can hear about it. So, Cardiff then.
Yeah.
Explain your weekend.
Okay, first off, I went over to Comic-Con over in Cardiff to go and see a few people over there, including my best mate Louis, who comes from Exeter, and we end up spending a lot of time going out to see a few big things. Cardiff is actually the first convention that we ever went to together, and it's honestly my favourite city for its rock culture. And most of the pubs and the clubs that you see around the place in England, one thing that you'll always have to unfortunately say through gritted teeth is a lot of them are techno, dance, dubstep, very trancey kind of vibe, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, there isn't a club in Cardiff apart from in the high street where, mostly it's, your typical student vibe, where you end up seeing stuff that doesn't seem to fall at the very least into the alternative category, and all of the pubs have stuff that is very retro, very underground, very, 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 very strong vibe of, what it is to be. I think it's weird. Most of the teenagers and most of the students in Cardiff end up going to pubs that are designed for their dads, and they are very, very, very entranced in the music scene, which is your leather jacket-clad, boot-wearing motorcycle gangs and the vibe of rock, metal, punk, everything in that spectrum. And there's even this place that we went to near the Millennium Stadium, which we went to for the after party for Comic-Con, and they have this entire underground, like the London Underground style map, showing all the bands that they've got on their set list for a typical club night in that pub. And if it goes too far down in one extreme which leads to chart music, that's the extreme that they say they tend to not go for if they can avoid it.
Nice. I wish they had that in Winchester.
To be fair, Winchester, it's many things, but Cardiff is 3 things which Winchester sadly isn't. It's a capital city. It's a student town with a lot more resources to its name, more unis than just this one, which, to be honest, that can be seen as a positive in terms of culture, but a negative in terms of, well, the city can only take so much. And I think there's just more financial stuff coming in here to invest in big businesses. Winchester is still just a small town. Cardiff's also the capital of another country. But either way, they've even got the world's oldest record store, which unfortunately I didn't get to track down. But it still ended up being something that is definitely on my list of things to do the next time. Something that should end up being spotted. And yeah, vinyl sells there like cakes do at this place whenever they've got something on for a good cause. So yeah, where over here we sell cakes to raise money for charity, they sell vinyl.
Sounds like a lot of fun you've had.
It was. I even got to see the Doctor Who experience, and yeah, plenty of stuff there that got me inspired to write a few bits of poetry about my time searching for a long-lost rock culture, which you can only find in Cardiff, it seems.
Excellent. And did you get the chance to see any bands or hear any music?
I got the chance to hear a lot of great music whilst I was playing video games at the after party, but that was about the full schematics of it, unfortunately. The Millennium Stadium also, sadly, this is sad news that everyone is complaining about, it's officially changed its name to Principality Stadium, which is actually causing a bit of tension in the atmosphere around the area. So, this is actually something which reflects a bit more in my poetry about times where I think people need to preserve the good stuff about what that character is based around and not move on for the sake of a financial agenda. So yeah, sponsors are fine. Do not rebrand a great stadium and do not destroy a great culture. That was the theme of what my weekend actually enlightened me about.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And obviously, with me and Mills here, we recorded the podcast without you, but we did.
Yeah.
You have heard it back, haven't you?
Mm-hmm.
And you enjoyed what you heard.
Especially the Base Hunter banter.
Yeah, unfortunately, we haven't had any events like that at the SU since then, but we do have Cascada playing here in May.
Oh my god,
and
don't tell me.
Yeah, and
Cascada!
She covered a Bruce Springsteen song.
I know.
She covered Because the Night.
It wasn't worth it.
I know. But yeah, like, we'll definitely be reviewing that on the podcast, won't we?
I'll tell you what, I'm turning up at that gig now just so I can say some really nasty things.
Wait, but that's a negative thing.
I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna judge the gig fairly, and I'm gonna do it by her own standards rather than my own.
And what's funny is that the winner of Winchester's Got Talent, I think, gets to perform with her.
What? Oh my god, don't tell me that. Oh my god. The ability to perform with Cascada is insignificant next to the honour of being able to simply go to an AC/DC or Bruce Springsteen performance.
And actually, shall we bring that on to our next topic? We're gutted.
Yeah, we are beyond gutted. When I saw this trending on Twitter, I was like, no,
yeah.
Just no.
The interesting thing is that Brian Johnson has been in the band for 36 years, and you even said it on an earlier episode that even some diehard AC/DC fans still see him as the replacement.
Yeah.
But regardless of what people think of Brian Johnson, he is their most successful frontman.
Yeah, and he did that all with one album.
Yep, one album, and the album The Razor's Edge, which is obviously best known for having Thunderstruck as its album opener.
Yeah.
Introduced them to a new audience.
Yeah.
And then when they came back in 2008 with Black Ice, they were a stadium band. And AC/DC are bigger now than they've ever been, to be honest. And it's interesting that Brian has been their third vocalist, because Dave Evans,
Bon Scott,
and
then
rest
Brian.
in peace, Bon Scott, and Brian. And that essentially the news is that doctors have informed Brian Johnson that if he carries on touring, he will go deaf. Now, AC/DC are only like, I think they're about halfway through their tour or something like that for Rock or Bust. Like, they've still got a US tour and they've still got Europe, so they've got all these dates booked. Fans, such as myself, have spent their money.
I was unfortunate and at the same time fortunate enough to not spend money because, in all honesty, I can only imagine what all the men and women in your position must be feeling at this point.
I don't know, I'm not as angry as well, I shouldn't say angry because it's sad what's happened.
Yeah.
What's made me angry is a replacement vocalist, potentially.
Which is sacrilegious bone.
Now, it doesn't matter if you can sing just as well or perform just as well as Brian Johnson. You're not Brian Johnson.
And
now,
Brian Johnson's voice is what makes half the songs he sings.
Exactly. Now, I wouldn't pay £85 to see AC/DC without him.
No.
And if they do get a replacement vocalist, I'll see who it is because I think I should be offered a refund. Now, I know it's bad. Refunds happen when things get cancelled. The tour won't be cancelled. They are looking into getting a replacement vocalist. Now, the problem is we've lost Malcolm Young, which is a big deal, as we all know. And obviously Phil Rudd, idiot, got arrested and etc.
Wasn't it for murder or attempted murder?
It was that and carrying drugs on him.
To be honest, I am not surprised.
Yeah, and so Five, the classic... On the Black Ice Tour, they had the classic five. You had Brian Johnson, you had Angus Young, you had Malcolm Young, you had Phil Rudd, and the bass player Cliff Williams.
Yeah.
So
Cliff, the Londoner.
Yeah, exactly. So, and now obviously they were down to 3.
Yeah.
But fortunately, being AC/DC live, you can still perform as long as you have Angus and Brian.
Yeah.
Because the other 3, although they're important to the sound and the history of the band, live, they're not much to look at, let's say.
Yeah, and let's face it, Phil, he's got good rhythm, but he's not the only decent drummer they've had. In fact, I actually prefer Chris.
Yeah, he's in the band now as well.
Chris Slade, who is actually now back in the band and was in their classic Donington Fest tour back in the 90s.
Yes.
I honestly think that his sound... Yeah, AC/DC always have classified themselves as a rock and roll band, and they are much like Motorhead in that sense, in fact, more so than ever now, given what is happening, and the fact that with Brian potentially going permanently deaf, they might as well even call it quits if they can't
just
do
retire.
it. Yeah.
There is no shame in retiring, It's actually interesting because Angus is actually a lot younger than Brian.
Yeah, and Brian's in his 70s, isn't he?
No, Brian's 68.
Whoa, I don't even remember when I last looked at his age, but I think that wasn't too far off where I saw him back then. It's just that, Phil has good rhythm, but at the same time, Chris, technically, and in terms of the sheer passion that he puts behind it, he is the better drummer, isn't he?
That's debatable.
Well, in terms of the typical blues rhythm which AC/DC do evolve out of, the point I was trying to make, you can see why they would want someone like Phil to help keep that going. But in terms of, live performance, don't you think Chris is a better presence and a better performer?
Potentially, but I do like the way... Well, there's 2 things with Phil. I know I'm not a fan of smokers, but I do think it looks cool when he's drumming with a cigarette in his mouth. It just looks so rock and roll. And also he played on he played on their best music. The best music that defines AC/DC, he played on.
Yeah, but I think the better performer of that stuff and the better musician is Chris, because also Phil looks bored. If you've seen...
Or he's stoned.
Yeah, he's always virtually stoned, or he looks stoic and stupid when he's performing. His face is just so blank and expressionless compared to Chris, who's always got this great big fangs bared, eager to get the job going because he wants to do the band proud.
For sure. And the good thing is that even with the loss of Malcolm and Phil, they've replaced them with the best people to replace them with. Yeah. Like Chris Slade is the perfect replacement, isn't he? Yeah. There isn't anyone on the planet who you would rather have behind that kit at the moment.
No, there isn't. In fact, I don't think actually I would have gotten rid of Chris or said anything, even if Phil could have come back.
Yeah.
Because, yeah. And also, it is sad about Malcolm. He is basically the man that put AC/DC together, but at the same time, he may well be
the Young Brothers.
Yeah, he may well be the brains and the business behind the band, but to be honest, it was always meant to be, if anything, a partnership between him, Angus, and Bon, then just him and Angus, and then when he finished with that, Brian may not well be able to contribute more these days than much of a vocalist, but because he did end up stopping with the songwriting.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he stopped with the songwriting, before the 90s, I think, because he just said he ran out of things to write about, and then virtually...
He got writer's block.
Yeah, he just basically had that. It was more... the way he put it was more, I ran out of stuff to write, and it was just like, okay, but surely you mean you've just ran out of ideas of how to write stuff about your experiences, because writer's block, it's something everyone gets, even me. And you at this point? So yeah, basically, it is just what it is. These guys may well be important, and Cliff is a brilliant bass player. He is a decent man who does a decent job, but ultimately, he, Malcolm, and Phil, you can replace them with the best people, and it doesn't really matter. Ultimately, Brian is probably by now, at the very least, a lot more people's favourite, and the only people that really do tend to get die-hard behind Bon are the ones that grew up watching the shows they performed back in Oz.
For sure, when they were playing much smaller places, and it was a lot more intimate and a lot more... It was when you're at the front and you can really feel the sweat in the band playing.
Yeah.
You can really feel it because it's that small,
Yeah, remember, actually, have you ever heard of Rock Goes to College? It was like a program back in the 70s. Bon was performing in there with AC/DC, and they were literally just in a pub, if anything. And the atmosphere is still as brilliant there as it would be up on a stadium.
Today.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
To be honest, it was actually one of AC/DC's first UK television performances was on the Old Grey Whistle Test.
Oh yeah.
Now that is awesome. I think it may well have been for the song Rocker.
Yeah.
But the way Angus runs up those stairs, it's fantastic. But yeah, interestingly, we've obviously mentioned about Phil's replacement. Malcolm's replacement is Stevie Young, who is the nephew of Malcolm and Angus.
Yeah.
And he's played in the band before when Malcolm's... Do you remember Malcolm was an alcoholic at one point? And he had to take some time out to sober up and get clean. And, so they replaced him with him.
Yeah. Pretty much,
And, so essentially, they've got the best people to replace them with, who have done that job before.
Yeah.
Now, no one's ever replaced Brian, and AC/DC are getting old.
Yeah.
So it's not like when, they're not young band. They were a young band when Bon died,
Yeah,
And
that was acceptable enough, because even though Bon had established himself as a very great and iconic frontman just with what he had done, he'd been with other bands before, but, I think Bon kind of knew and would agree himself that if anything did happen, it wouldn't be a bad thing. And you see, the reason that they even got Brian in there was basically because Bon had actually seen him perform with Geordie, his previous band, and he had actually stated how much he admired Brian and his vocals, because he said it was in the same vein as Little Richard, who was Bon's hero as a vocalist. And yeah, Brian Johnson, in terms of the way he just goes all at it, the way Little Richard does, they don't sound completely identical, but you can pick up the same influence on there. And, well, Brian's just got the full package, and because they were young enough, they could get away with getting someone like that in there.
Do you know what to me it's like?
What?
Because where AC/DC have had 3 vocalists, so have Iron Maiden and Priest have had a couple. Let's just say, if Iron Maiden, if Bruce Dickinson, the same thing happened to him, you wouldn't want to see now, at this point in their career, a different man fronting Iron Maiden, would you? Same with Priest. You wouldn't want to see another man fronting Judas Priest now.
Yeah.
It just... It's too established. They're too much of a monster.
Yeah,
And
Brian...
They're aging.
Yeah, they are aging to a point where... I mean, yeah, you wouldn't know they've aged too much unless you were looking purely at pictures of them compared to now, but...
They're monsters.
Yeah,
they're money-making machines.
Yeah, do not be fooled, though, by the fact they can still pull it off. Brian's hearing...
Yeah, still fantastic.
Yeah, Brian is still fantastic, but his hearing is definitely going. So, in all honesty, the only logical thing we can do, and I'm saying this as a man that would never want to retire, if only I could be in Brian's position, better to retire with pride than keep on going.
Better to burn out than fade away,
yeah.
As Neil Young says.
Yeah, leave a star for people to aspire, not one great big supernova that the world may admire for its effort and its ability to keep going till it simply cannot anymore.
For sure, and let's be honest.
Yeah.
Like I said, the classic five, without three of them,
yeah,
and especially with the front man missing, it's not AC/DC.
Yeah.
Like, for me, the lineup last year, I know a lot of people wouldn't say it's AC/DC without Malcolm, and I can understand why you'd say that. But as a live band, having the lineup that I mentioned, Brian, Angus, Cliff, Stevie, and Chris, you can still call that AC/DC.
Yeah.
You know, you've still got the two guys who do the most on stage in terms of performing, the two guys at the front. One of them's gone, AC/DC are fucked. That's exactly what's happened.
Yeah. I mean, Bon was, a guy that knew how to do things right. Mal has dementia. He can't be blamed for being made to sit back. Angus still has a lot of years that he can still potentially do. But I would say this much. As much as I love Angus, Brian has probably become he's every bit as iconic as Angus now, even if you won't see... I would say in this sense, hear me out, people. Brian may not immediately be on the merchandise the same way Angus is, because Angus has been on virtually every piece of merchandise AC/DC have ever established.
Angus is the face of the band, though.
But Brian is basically the necessary instrument that the band can't function without. He is the heart and the soul, in a way, in the sense that you take away the necessary instrument, which is Brian's vocals, the same way you take away that one organ in your chest. Yeah, you may have the brain still functioning, but, well, the brain can only function on perception. The heart is what keeps everything going. It's the machine's most vital part. And, I mean, you can be completely brain dead and you can still chug along, but it's not the same. It's not the same sort of thing. People can act without a great deal of commercial and record producing perception, and they can just keep going, and they might plow through things.
For sure.
But Brian is too much of an important piece of the band that you don't see on the surface, and you need to get it through that Brian, with him gone, AC/DC are pretty much dead.
I agree, and also, for me, AC/DC are not a football stadium band without him, and they are not £85 tickets without him. For me, without Brian Johnson and a replacement vocalist, tickets should be about £45, and they should be playing arenas, not stadiums. And I know that sounds similar to the people who don't go to gigs, but football stadiums are 60 to 90,000 people, and arenas are 20,000. That is the difference.
The difference between Wembley Stadium, the Millennium Stadium, and the arenas and the smaller venues in that perimeter.
For sure. And that's kind of it, to be honest. And like I said, I do have a ticket for the Olympic Stadium in London.
Aye.
And I know you were interested in that gig, Matt, but you're kind of glad now that you didn't book it, considering what's happened. I know that you wouldn't want to see AC/DC without Brian.
Yeah,
I don't really want to either, but I'm just going to see what happens, because this sounds really odd. Brian Johnson, I would say, is about 95% ruled out of AC/DC.
Yeah.
But he hasn't officially confirmed his retirement. They haven't cancelled the UK shows or the European tour.
Yeah.
There may be some kind of technology that could help him. He might have to put some kind of technology around his ears to make him perform. There is technology out there.
I know. I think Brian did actually acknowledge quite a while ago, though, that I think it was actually when he had cancer on his tongue.
No, that was Bruce Dickinson, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't. I'm trying to remember if it was actually. It might have just been throat cancer of some description. Either way, it was something that would have prevented him from using his voice. Yeah, Brian said he wasn't planning on retiring, but if he was unable to perform, he didn't have any way of saying that he was just going to be that stubborn. He was more than happy to retire if he knew there was nothing else he could do about it. Mm-hmm. Spoken like a true Geordie and son of a coal miner.
I know that he said to Eddie Trunk once, he said to him that he feels like he's getting too old and he may have to call it quits. And that was during like the Black Ice tour, I think it was.
How long? It was 2009, the Black Ice tour.
It was 9, 10. It was the album came out in 8, and they toured it in 9 and 10. And do you know what's funny? You know we were talking about band irreplaceable frontmen.
Yeah.
Around that time, Aerosmith were really annoyed at Steven Tyler and were thinking about firing him and getting a replacement.
Oh, not again.
No, but this is old news though, Matt.
Yeah, I know, but...
Yeah, you can't... Let's just say, get a replacement for Steven Tyler. Yeah, exactly.
And actually, may I just say, Mr. DuPont, there is no such thing as old news if you haven't heard it before.
Okay, true, man. Yeah. But yeah, what I'm saying is, Brian Johnson, at this point in AC/DC's career, is irreplaceable. And so many music websites and magazines are writing down lists of frontmen who could potentially do the job. And yes, some of them may do a good job, but not to fill football stadiums and seeing Angus Young jumping around next to them. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean...
They may perform well together, but that's not what AC/DC fans want.
They want someone that has that very, very distinctive Geordie shrill with such unbelievable tonality that it requires, as Angus once put it himself, you basically get a truck and drop it on each foot.
Yes. By the way, Dave Evans has actually said that he wants to front AC/DC. However, I can't see that happening because they didn't want him being their singer in the first place.
Yeah, how did he even get on board?
I don't know. In fairness, guys, I've actually never listened to Dave Evans sing, so I don't want to judge him.
I've only heard the one song, and it's actually from AC/DC's, I think, I'm trying to remember, is it TNT or something? The one
I've only heard Bond sing it.
Well, yeah, but it was the song that was like, "Can I Sit Next to You, Girl?"
I've heard Bond sing that.
Yeah, I've heard Bond's version on that album, and I've heard Dave's version when I was just looking up some archive footage I saw on a documentary. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, let's face it, he may well get away with being in a glam band, but that was precisely what
AC/DC didn't want to be.
Yeah, Malcolm didn't want anything like that in his previous band, the Velvet Underground, not to be confused with the famous one, just a club band he formed in Oz.
Got you.
And yeah, Dave, I mean, he obviously had disputes with the band. They didn't want him there anyway, and they are not about to let him take over during a time where they are in no position where they would need to. I mean, let's face it, if they allowed him to take over, it would be a further down step to just playing nothing but instrumentals of the same music.
What's interesting, actually, is the band that get compared to AC/DC the most over the past decade or so have been Airborne. Now, Joel O'Keefe would do a good job fronting AC/DC. However, it would be kind of funny.
Yeah.
And I hate to say it, but because every time people mention Airborne or listen to their music, they always have and always will, because they said they're never going to change, like AC/DC, they always have and always will be compared to AC/DC. So to have the band that sound like AC/DC but more modern, fronting them is laughable in a way.
Yeah, and it's... I don't know if you'd even call it sacrilegious, because you don't want the new compared too often to the original, the real AC/DC, but like you can imagine that neither Brian nor Angus nor Cliff nor Chris nor Stevie want anything to happen like that because they've got nothing against them. They just don't want too many comparisons to be made at a time like this.
The interesting thing is, do you give the role to a known guy or a newcomer? Because there are people fronting AC/DC tribute bands who could do a good job.
Yeah.
But regardless of that, we don't want to see it. Because
Yeah.
I would like AC/DC to retire.
Yeah.
I know that's that's rubbish to say, because I don't want any band to retire, but when you have classic members who are so important to the history not there anymore and playing smaller venues and you know, it's just a shame because they're your band, you know, you're used to what they're like.
Yeah, and it's not the same, you know, for how it was with Richie Faulkner taking over for Judas Priest.
Yeah, because they've still got enough classic members.
They've still got enough classic members, and also it was, if anything, not a detriment just to get a new breath of life in there.
Yeah, for sure.
It was Richie that inspired the band to just keep
going and make Redeemer of Souls.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's it. So, just closing off this this segment. Like I said, I still have my ticket. There's been no news. I haven't been offered a refund, and I'm waiting to hear news on what will happen. But the reason why I'm not that gutted compared to, like, let's say if it happened last year is I have seen AC/DC before. I saw them at Wembley Stadium last year with Brian, and it was fantastic. And the next day I'm going to see Bruce Springsteen at Wembley Stadium, which, let's be honest, keeps me happy regardless of what happened the day before. Moving on to our next segment is news which has actually left me a bit frustrated, like the news before, and that is Down, meaning the band, have parted ways with European festivals this summer. They've been on lineups such as Hellfest and Download, which obviously I booked and Matt here is planning on going to. They were billed to play fourth from top on the main stage on Saturday, on the day Black Sabbath are headlining. Down are a band I really like. They're a band I've never seen. They're a band that I've had chances to see but keep missing. So as soon as they got announced for Download, I was, yes, get to tick down off my list. And the reason why they have is because everybody who knows rock and metal and everyone who's listened to our podcast, episode 5, I believe it was when we mentioned about the terrible thing that that Phil Anselmo did, obviously doing the Nazi salute and shouting "White Power" at the Dime Bash show when he was drunk back in January, and he's embarrassed.
Yeah.
So essentially, he's embarrassed, he's shamed, he's apologised, and for that he wants to hide himself.
And actually, I mean, obviously this is a controversial topic because it comes to a moral versus, you know, sentimental stance, don't you think? Mm-hmm. In the sense that the fans are sentimental to the music regardless, but Phil...
Yes, exactly.
But Phil actually seems to be realising whatever joke he made in whatever context, it has pretty much ruined him forever.
I wouldn't say forever. I know we think that it's very soon, so just remember that, because you could say that was his last straw, but I still reckon what he did was bad. Do I think he's a prick? Of course I do. Yeah. However, when he plays at Download, it's not just him, it's the rest of the guys in Down. As long as him and the band come on stage and do a good performance, and they would still get a massive crowd. They would. You know, people, they're not going to play in front of 10 people. There will still be about 60,000 people watching them. Yeah. Because they are a big band, and people want to see them, and they've got good music. And regardless, he is a cult frontman. Yeah. He is a big frontman in metal history because he fronted Pantera. Yeah. And he's been successful in other bands. So he's got a good portfolio, back catalogue, whatever you want to say. Yeah. And, I was, regardless, when the news happened, I was obviously disappointed for him. But I was also gutted because I was like... I really hope they don't get kicked off the Download bill. And they haven't been kicked off. They've removed themselves.
Yeah, that's actually... In all honesty, I think it's better they do that than it is for Download to have to put up with the shame of doing it themselves, because you can imagine how they must be feeling knowing that they booked that group and then knowing that they're coming to Britain, which is one of the most anti-Nazi nations on the planet. If you so much as put a swastika up for, say, purposes of showcasing something, like for museum purposes for World War II, the swastika has become such an intimate symbol of hatred in this place especially, and in Israel even more so, that, well, it's just like, even if it's for reasons which they can't logically attack you for, they will attack you for it. Phil would get flayed before he even gets to immigration.
For sure.
And very quickly, like, what do you think is honestly the more important thing, though, in this statement? Like, the moral basis of trying to prevent that sort of image being associated with the rock and metal fandom, which is obviously what some idiots will do because they'll enlarge this to a new extreme? Or do you think it's more meant to be about the fact that, you know, regardless of his mistakes, he is still a musician, I still want him to perform and contribute?
Second, what you just said.
Yeah.
And the reason being, we've already lost Motorhead from Download. So essentially, Motorhead and Down, two bands that make people buy tickets to Download, aren't there?
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously, contrasting circumstances for why they're not there.
Yeah.
But I could ask you this question, Matt.
Yeah.
Are you disappointed that Down are not playing at Download? No pun intended.
Yeah, no pun intended, but still very easily notified. In all honesty, Down, I like what I've heard, but I haven't heard enough to form a massive solid opinion. For that, I am kind of thankful.
You're glad they're gone?
No, I'm thankful that I don't have a fully established opinion of their entire identity and their image. In the sense that I think that they could potentially do a lot more. I like what I have heard of the band, but I haven't heard enough to say I am a fan, or more than a casual listener.
Got you.
So, I guess it really depends on whether or not my opinion of their music does grow over time, but you need more stuff in that sense just to get me.
Got you. The guys on the That's Not Metal podcast are annoyed that Down have removed themselves, because they kind of said, like, you know, I know it's soon, but if Down continue as a band, they will come back to Europe and they will play at Download again. But it's kind of just get on with it, don't do anything stupid, play, you know, and essentially he's just got to keep going and not make any more, say any more. What's happened is career damaging, no doubt.
Yeah.
And when they tour again, people may not. Well, I'm not sure really. It's a hard one because. Like you said, music aside, if you just judge it on music, of course they'll sell tickets, of course they'll pack places. Yeah. But I just feel like if they played at Download on that Saturday, there's going to be weird atmosphere at the start. Yeah. Down walk on stage, the crowd, there may be some boos potentially. However, if Down play and be solid, which their reputation is, and he doesn't say or do anything stupid and just sings the fucking songs.
Yeah.
I reckon they could win the crowd over, and then that would be a step towards
redemption,
potentially. And I feel like them removing themselves is basically him. He's almost scared.
To be fair, I don't blame him. He is, as I've already stated, coming over here. The only place where he wouldn't be safe.
No, but it's not just here. He's removed himself from all Europe.
Yeah, I know, but if you think about it, Britain is simply the worst place to be a Nazi. In about 3 locations. I mean, in America, you can even get away with being a Nazi if you've seen American History X. Mm-hmm. Think this way. You've got Britain, Germany. Yes, Germany. They are so against Hitler because they want people to understand that only 31% of their entire population back during the Second World War were even supporters of the Nazi Reich. They need to get it across there to everybody how anti-Nazi they are. There are some posters that look so anti-Nazi that if you ever see people waving them up against people in a protest, you're actually worried that Germans would actually get, full-on savage against you for being in possession of any Nazi memorabilia. Like, it's one of those places which savagely wants to get rid of all copies of Mein Kampf. And Israel, like, a Nazi entering Israel is probably the equivalent of a man without anything on his back walking into a great big gas chamber filled with napalm. You'll be dead from the first step. It's terrifying, and he's realised that he's got more on his position now to try and make amends than he has anything else, so I'm actually saying I kind of agree with his stance on this point. He is better off not risking it if he can avoid it.
Yeah, but how long for?
He needs to probably try and work his way back in other means.
Yeah, how?
I don't entirely have the answer. Musically, he does need to do some stuff to re-establish himself.
Like perform, which is why I'm gutted they're not
But
downloads.
he needs to take it gradually. He needs to make sure that he doesn't jump straight into the line of fire.
By the way, they were at Download 2013 on the main stage, and I missed them because there was a clash. They clashed with Europe, and I went and saw Europe and got to sing along to Rock the Night and the final countdown.
Oh, and that's always worth it.
Yeah, as for this year, I'm not sure who Down would have been clashing with, but regardless. Now, the next question is... replacing them is going to be hard because they have got a really big slot. We've already asked this question. They are a Brixton Academy size band who you pay about 30, 35 quid to go and see. Yeah. What bands are touring that can fill that slot? I don't think there's... We've mentioned a couple, but, I think replacing them is going to be a challenge for Download. Who's going to fill that slot? It's a big slot,
Indeed.
It's like, okay, Bullet for My Valentine probably have been offered to play Download, but Bullet think they're bigger than what they are at the moment because of their previous arena reputation. Now, Bullet could easily take that slot, but I don't think they want to because they think they're bigger than that. And bands, the position that they get and how much they're getting paid is a big deal to whether they get booked or not, as you're aware. Yeah. Dropkicks, maybe?
I would definitely want to see Dropkicks at some point. Like, we need to go more into depth about just, like, cult rock at some point because... different cult followings for different things on this podcast needs to be discussed for smaller bands in terms of the area which they occupy but are transcendent up there with the big boys.
For sure.
Yeah.
And so that closes out our segment on Down, parting ways with European festivals this summer. When they will be back in Europe, who knows, ask Philip H. Anselmo. Okay, moving on to our next topic, which is something that myself and Matt Mills discussed last week, was Sabaton and Alestorm in Southampton. Matanza Mafia-Fedora here has not yet had his say on the evening. Go ahead.
There she blows. 'Twas a very, very difficult time that I was having prior to going to that gig, and let me tell you, Sabaton and Alestorm was the best night of that recent vicinity week. I had a great time there. Alestorm were just incredible to watch. Trust me, like, the ability just to get out there and perform on that stage a bunch of drinking anthems, sea shanties. They were essentially what every sailor dreams of. And as we all know, I was born here in Hampshire. I grew up predominantly of my life in Devon, which again is just the other end of the Wessex region. Sea culture across the entirety of the southwest, going into the southeast and then a bit further up the east coast itself, all the way into London. It was a dream come true seeing Alestorm, and I had a great time picking out a t-shirt. And when I say a great time, I mean it was satisfying to get through the hassle of haggling.
Oh yeah, that was it. The guy who was working on the merch stand selling T-shirts for Alestorm, refused to take pound coins, which is the first time in my life where I've seen that at a gig, or even anywhere, like with customer service. We don't take pound coins.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm giving you my money here. Pound coins are a common thing in a wallet. You know?
And as the lead singer would say, that's legal tender, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you ever tried paying a London taxi driver with a Scottish £20 note? I have, and I've said, legal tender, keep the change. It was a fun topic, but this was a really random equivalent of that same night. It was just like really weird how I ended up having to pay, in notes for something that I was giving him the exact amount regardless. But the danger with that is you never want to do that with me, because I will gradually lose interest and get hungry in between minutes where I could potentially have the exact amount in coins or the exact amount in notes. So, thankfully, I didn't get bored or depressed or hungry and spend all my money on a packet of crisps. But either way, Sabaton and Alestorm. Which was the better band that night? In all honesty,
Sabaton. But that's because Sabaton's
I was going to say my bit.
No, that's just what I think. But
yeah, but I was going to say, Alestorm lived up purely to my expectations. Sabaton, on the other hand, transcended the frigging ladder.
Well, that's the thing, but you know more about Alestorm's music. Same way I do, in all fairness.
And I actually ended up getting a full taste of both bands' proper set lists, and yeah, with this, I'm a little disappointed that they didn't play Death Throes of the Terror Squid, because that song is a hilarious and one of my all-time favourite Alestorm songs, but my new favourite Sabaton song is easily To Hell and Back, which is about men in my position who suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. Yep, war can do a lot of damaging things to your psychology, as I would know.
Excellent. And I thought the atmosphere the whole night was fantastic.
Yeah.
And
how would you compare it to the Skin Dread gig?
Better.
Both bands really do go full out with the performance, but where do you think one might have had a trump card
there was
over
more
the other?
people at Sabaton.
Yeah.
Bigger crowd.
Yeah.
Also, the sound for Sabaton was better than for Skin Dread. That's not Benji's fault. It's not the rest of the guys in Skin Dread's fault, but
the sound system more than anything.
Well, yeah, the sound during Alestorm wasn't that good. They had the keytar up like way too high, so you could hardly hear his voice at times.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, the sound was great for Sabaton. It wasn't as much for Alestorm.
Yeah.
Both bands played full sets. You heard mostly what you wanted to hear. For me, Alestorm did a near enough. Well, I would have liked to have heard Wolves of the Sea.
Yeah.
But and even they never play it, but they should really play You Are a Pirate at some point.
Yeah.
The Lazy Town cover, because that would be hilarious. And also, it's actually one of their better known songs, even though it's a bonus track.
So let me get this straight. They wouldn't play anything which would have taken up, 2 or 3 potential songs that they may have wanted to promote, and they didn't do anything that could have just taken up the slot of other songs just as good.
But in fairness to Alestorm, though, I'm not going to criticise their setlist, because their setlist was right.
Yeah, I'm not saying it wasn't right. I'm just saying, they lived up to my expectations, but, I still would have liked to have heard my favourite of their songs.
You could have asked Christopher Bowes when you met him.
I could have done that, but at the same time, I think I might as well just not do anything that might put them off.
That's it. We met the two main guys from Alestorm, the two longest serving members of Alestorm after the gig, which was cool. We met them by the merch stand and had quick photos. And yeah, really nice guys, good to their fans. And I love how, I was saying this last week actually, but it's interesting how the crowd are going absolutely crazy, but yet the band seem quite laid back, like what Chris does when he sings.
Yeah.
He seems so relaxed when he's up there with his keytar.
Aye.
And yeah, for sure. And they definitely got the bands in the right order. If Sabaton went on before Alestorm, that could have been a bit. That would have been a bit of a weird one because I reckon Sabaton would have crushed them. But it's not a competition. It's not a rivalry.
It was just a co-headliner tour, and both bands delivered on their promises.
Yeah, and Sabaton closing the night was correct. And you'd go again, wouldn't you?
I would go as long as they're willing to perform there.
Excellent.
To the gates of hell.
To the gates of hell. Cause our way to heaven.
Primo Victoria.
Yeah.
I'd never realised how well I can do that.
Yeah, indeed. So, anyway, that was obviously a couple of weeks ago. Like I said earlier in the episode, Matt Mills will be reviewing Exodus at Southampton next week. But now we're going to move on to the top 5 that you missed last week. Your top 5 favourite guitar solos of all time. Your number 5, please.
Okay, my number 5. Jimmy Page's on Led Zeppelin for Whole Lot of Love. And it's not really anything super that really gets me so much technically. I mean, obviously it is a brilliant technical track, but I think it was the first proper guitar solo that really got me interested in the vibe of, different aspects of what a band contributes to the sound, because often people either think, when they're really young, they think the voice is the most important aspect of the band, but that's just one instrument.
For sure, it's every member combined.
And who really, apart from maybe the Eagles, can top Led Zeppelin for the harmony factor?
Do you mean vocal harmony?
I mean like the harmony in general of the band. Like, with Bonzo dying, they ended up splitting up. But, you see, they really were the Beatles of hard rock, because they achieved almost as much as the Beatles in roughly the same amount of time, and as a band they are every bit as iconic. I would even go as far as saying, in terms of the sheer progression of music, they are more iconic.
For sure. Anyway, do you mind talking about the solo itself?
The solo itself, No, but
what do you like about it? Why is it
I know, I'm getting to that. But yeah, basically, the solo, it was, as I've just said, it is the solo that kind of triggered my fascination for more than just the vocals in a band. Because obviously the band, every member has to count for something, and it got me understanding why Jimmy Page is one of the greatest guitarists of all time.
Excellent. Your number 4, please.
My number 4, Slash, November Rain.
Good one. I actually had Mr. Brownstone in my honourable mentions.
Yeah. I don't have honourable mentions. I'm trying to keep this one condensed, but either way. Yeah. Slash, November Rain. That track, it is basically the track which, whilst my mum was complaining about the length of a lot of stuff, I was too busy listening to the great melodies of that track when I played it in the car one day. And my mum was reluctant to change it. And I was like, not listening. Slash has slashed away all pain. And this, Mum, is my zen. It was basically my escape track because, I mean, November Rain itself is a very interesting video. And it's got a very interesting twist on how it changes at the end. But I think that Slash, in the centre with his solos that he does, I really, really like the way how he just gives me that sense of like, wow, I actually feel like just in the video, I am actually outside a church in the middle of nowhere, and I am basically just making my stance of power right here to a great big isolated landmass that represents the world and its desolate views of what the music industry is doing with music for the better. This is an image, and this is a man taking a stance out there. It's a very idiosyncratic feeling that I get, but it's what I get. Slash's solo in that is one that makes me feel more alive when I'm standing by myself.
Excellent. And I love that solo. It's a lullaby, it's iconic, it's beautiful, it just soars.
Yeah.
It's you could be in any mood and it could cheer you up.
Yeah, pretty much.
And you could argue, I don't know, I was about to say it's his signature like guitar solo, but his solo in Sweet Child of Mine is also pretty famous in terms of like fame factor. But anyway, your number 3, please.
Angus Young in AC/DC, as we were talking about. Dirty deeds done dirt cheap.
Yeah.
It is basically just a very, very, very badass song, and it's about a man that makes a great living with a great time doing some really bad things.
By the way, hearing that song live, hairs on my arms up.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, more so than any other song, unexpectedly.
Yeah.
What I mean is, seeing that crowd do those fists in the airs for the done dirt cheap. I was, like, I'm actually gutted talking about this because the whole Brian Johnson thing.
Yeah, so am I, but this is actually the thing that makes me so...
I know that Bond obviously sung this song.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. It's not even that. It's just like, Angus, that solo of his, it was enough to probably make me want to just get up there and get an angry mob and then charge against my enemies. Like, I do an awful lot of analogies, me being a poet, about conflict, but this is one thing that I have done. I have listened to that solo and that entire track, but the solo is what completes it. The crowd going, done dirt cheap, and then it's just the solo which gets us all going, cry havoc, and like loose the dogs of war, and then we charge at my enemies, and we make all of them taste their own blood. In a very figurative sense, I mean I win the argument I've been fighting to win.
Cool. It wasn't in my top 5, but my favourite solo from Angus is actually in Shoot to Thrill. I love the solo in Shoot to Thrill. And if you haven't heard it, just watch Iron Man or something. Yeah. Okay, what was it? Your number 2, please.
Scorpions, Send Me an Angel. Mm-hmm. It is basically
beautiful ballad.
Yeah, it is a beautiful ballad, a lullaby, and me being a Christian, it actually is something I can relate to a lot more than the average rocker, it seems. But yeah, either way, music is transcendent and universal to everybody, so allow that to be your gateway into there. And I love the way how, just like, even when that sudden upbeat, like, bit comes in, your mood doesn't change, but you feel the contrast, and you love the ability just to keep your peace, because you know, listening to that song, there are better things yet to come for you. It's every bump in the road, every problem at the start, there is a better outcome that you know that your prayers, if you like, for me, or just cry of help for some people, would be answered.
Excellent. To be honest, that's one of my favourite Scorpion songs.
Yeah.
And one of the few bands that I really like who I've yet to see.
Same here. I really want to see them so badly.
Indeed. Your number 1, please.
It's another Slash song, or a song of Guns N' Roses, Paradise City.
Right.
Let me tell you, I love my hometown and I love Hampshire. I love the Isle of Wight as a concept for a place that can just be a great area to go. And in all honesty, Paradise City just brings out this idea that, yeah, there is everything that I have that I need here. I may not have all the stuff that I want, but there is everything that I need. And then there are a few occasions where I've been up on the down watching a few people. And yeah, it brings back lovely memories of me imagining myself with my girlfriend at the time, running about, doing things the way we wanted to do it. And just enjoying life here in Winchester when we came back to see a few people before she ended up moving away. And yeah, having the time of our lives. It was just a great summer anthem, a great summer solo, and it made me dive all the way down the bottom of the down, just enjoying life. And then walking back into the city, ice creams everywhere, and we were actually singing the song itself. It was a fun time. It was the best of times.
For sure, and that solo, it's obviously at the end of the song, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like you hear like Axl's like vocals like in the background, but it's more focused on just the shredding.
Yeah, exactly.
And so yeah, that's your top 5 done.
Yeah. It's a very different list to what I think a lot of people will go for, because they're either basing it purely on the technicality or they're basing it off the emotion. But me, I try and incorporate different elements of different things that were significant to me in my musical journey, if you like.
Got you.
Yep.
Okay. Now, finishing off the episode, I'm going to be talking about my top 5 album openers, which, if he promises, next week, he has a week. I'm giving you a week, man. Next week, you're going to say your 5.
Okay, then.
Okay.
Fair play.
Okay. And you have a week. You have been warned.
I will, but yeah.
Indeed. And, so yeah, my number 5 for our all-time favourite album openers in my musical history is Battery by Metallica on Master of Puppets.
Oh, yeah.
Master of Puppets was the first Metallica album I ever paid for. And let's just say that intro and that just overall song is, in my opinion, like the perfect thrash metal song and the perfect way to like kind of like smash an audience in the face.
Yeah.
It was hard to pick between this and Angel of Death by Slayer on Raining Blood, but it's just the dun 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 dun. It's classic Metallica. Metallica have always had great album openers. I mean, Hit the Lights and Fight Fire with Fire, and obviously Blackened, great openers. But Battery has always been my favourite. Obviously, Enter Sandman as well is a fantastic album opener. But my favourite album is actually Ride the Lightning, but my second favourite is Master of Puppets. And for me, Battery is my favourite song on Master of Puppets, and it's the album opener. And for me, Metallica are actually the heaviest band on my list in this top 5. And for me, out of every single heavy metal band I ever listened to, it is my favourite album opener. Many people would say War Pigs by Black Sabbath, which is also a strong choice, you'd say.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think. Lots of people would say Aces High by Iron Maiden on Power Slave. And obviously, I was talking about Black Sabbath. That War Pigs is on the Paranoid album. Yeah. But yeah, Battery by Metallica, which then, as soon as it finishes, the song Master of Puppets starts. And it's incredible. Another one, actually, Holy Wars by Megadeth to start Rust in Peace.
Yeah.
But I've already had Megadeth in my top 5 albums. So yeah, Battery, Metallica, my number 5. My number 4, and this is very personal, not many people would have this, but I would, Sucker Train Blues by Velvet Revolver.
That wouldn't be a bad way to kick off an album.
Well, of course not. It's just... I'm not sure if it's my favourite song on the album, because I love every song on that album. However, the tension, the build-up, dun 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 dun, and then just the break into the riff.
Yeah.
It sounds like a train racing off a track. It's dangerous, it's sexy, it's smooth, and then the vocals kick in. And it's just, my God, what is this? And I know that you're a fan of that song.
Yeah. It is pretty much, I think, in all honesty, my favourite Velvet Revolt track, because I don't know what it is. It's just like, I think that for all the songs that I have heard, it is the one that actually seems to just make me want to get out the most typical rock vibe of mine, and I can charge right into it.
Yeah, and you're talking about guitar solos. Slash's solo on that song is awesome.
Yeah.
It's frantic, it's like chugging kind of riff.
It's like the Flying Scotsman.
Yeah.
Personified as a guitar.
Yeah, and then straight after that, you've got Scott Weiland's vocal effect with a megaphone. That's it. 1, 2, 3. Cut up his hands. What do you see? All the animals are dead. The rest of them. And it's just like, the song is absolutely crazy and so over the top, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
With Velvet Revolver, there was absolutely nothing, for me, there was nothing generic about the band.
Yeah.
It was completely original. The guys had heart, they had talent, and that song is as good an album opener as you will hear in 21st century hard rock music. And That's a song that hairs on your arms go up. If you want to hear the song, download 2005, Velvet Revolver opening their set with Sucker Train Blues. My fucking God. Danger personified.
Language.
Dangerous rock and roll.
Yeah.
Sorry, Matt.
It's alright, I'm just quoting Captain America because I saw the opportunity.
For sure. Okay, my number 4, a song, Matt, you may or may not know, but lots of listeners may know. Great Expectations by the Gaslight Anthem. Do you know it?
Yes.
It's from the 59 Sound, which came out in 2008, which is the first album I ever heard by them. I saw them support Bruce Springsteen in 2009, and that was my introduction to the band. Since then, they've had a lot of success, released lots of brilliant albums. But for me, when I got the album, it's just the dun 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 dun. Mary's the station is playing every sad song. The way that hits you, brilliant. And that song has a place in my heart and is the best album opener they have.
Yeah.
And I know picking your top 5 favourite album openers, you could pick loads. You could go for hundreds, you know, because an album you love, you're guaranteed to love the first track. But for me, it is the perfect song to start the album. No other song on the album would have kicked it off the way that this song did. It's just basically straight into it. It's straight in, it hits you, and you know immediately whether you like it or not. And that is the great thing that the Gaslight Anthem have. So yeah, Gaslight Anthem, Great Expectations, my number 3. And speaking of Heartland rock or that kind, their main influence, and the first time I saw them was Bruce Springsteen.
Nice.
Badlands from Darkness on the Edge of Town, my number 2.
Yeah.
You're a fan of that album?
Yeah. Badlands especially is a great track, and yeah, that is actually, in all honesty, probably my favourite album, not only by Bruce Springsteen, but my favourite album, point blank.
And as an opener?
Yeah, as an opener, Badlands is just like, it fits the theme really for hard rock in terms of like, you know, a very good, very, very strong Heartland. Sorry, I didn't quite make the rest of that clear. Heartland rock, about the theme of what it is, trying to keep a consistent feel. It sets up the idea for someone in the very core of American blue-collar lifestyle. And the rest of the album just carries it on from start to finish. The journey that goes wrong to the worst possible consequence.
For sure. And what I love about Badlands is the intro. And obviously when Springsteen plays it live, the crowd go, whoa. Yeah. And for me, the perfect gig opener by Bruce Springsteen, Badlands, without question. If you'd pick one song to open his set, some people might say Thunder Road or Ties That Bind or even Born in the USA, but for me, Badlands is the essential gig opener and album opener. And it's a fantastic song. It's a rallying cry. The chorus is huge. Mass sing-along live. It's a song he has to play every gig. He does. Yeah. And it's on my number 2, and it's unlucky to miss out on number 1. But my number 1 is on many people's lists. It's by a band we've mentioned already in this episode. It's from Appetite for Destruction. It's Welcome to the Jungle by Guns N' Roses. As an album opener, it's the best ever.
And it's on the highest selling debut album in history, so that alone is enough to get it at least halfway points, and then that extra step
for sure. But what I love about it is dun 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 like the way that hits you. Yeah. It's fantastic. You could be driving down a road playing that. You could be at a gig at a club. That song fits all the boundaries. It is danger personified. And believe it or not, I actually think that song is the most important song on that album because it had kicked down the doors for enough of this hairspray rubbish. We are a band that can appeal to the hard rockers, the glam fans, and this song is our anthem.
Yeah,
as such. And it's one of the most important songs in rock history.
That is without a doubt. And also, given the fact that LA had a very, very big drug scene, and still does to this day. It's one of the most relevant anthems of its time.
For sure. And there is nothing about the song you would change as a creator of an artistic piece.
Yeah.
Like, there is that fantastic solo, chorus, riff, introduction, and it's timeless.
Yeah.
Like, you don't listen to it and think this is old. You listen to it and you're like, yep, welcome to the jungle.
Yeah.
Fucking tune. If anyone thinks it's shit, you are wrong.
I could play that in a hoodie's ghetto in London, and I'd be like, this is the right feel, and it's the right time of day.
And the band's performance on the song is fantastic as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've never seen it being performed as...
No, I don't mean like that. I mean just listening to them.
Yeah, just listening to it. Yeah, like, their precision is unquestionable.
And, well, yeah, like, Appetite for Destruction as an album is incredible, and it is, in my opinion, the greatest album opener in rock history, and the best album opener I have ever heard. And when they play live, they usually play it second, but that's obviously with the current lineup. But anyway, that is my number one. That is my top 5 album openers, which both Matanza and Matt Mills will be saying theirs next week.
Yeah.
And yeah, next week we will have Mills returning. He will be talking about Exodus gig. And what else? We haven't been that well prepared for this episode, but we will have a set list of things to talk about. That is for sure.
Yeah.
So, hope you've enjoyed this episode with just me and Matanza like old times. Mr. DuPont, out.
Matanza Mafia-Fedora, out.